A little while back, we made a video about how Trump is hurting American farmers. It was actually quite popular for us, not only on this channel, but over on West Coast Warrens, our farming channel. However, over here at the New Bull Moose, we don't believe in just complaining about our political rivals, unlike the Democratic Party, but rather in making solutions to the problems they don't care to address. It's been a while since our last policy video, so we want to come back after some scathing reviews of the current presidential administration with what we will do here at the New Bull Moose. Allow us to introduce you to a new policy to fix many of America's problems. First and foremost, let's do what we like to do here and get the facts out there. The American Southwest has the most federally owned land in the United States of America. Nevada alone is over 80% federally owned land. Overall, 27.4% of our nation's land is federally owned, as a matter of fact. 1 in every 4 square miles of our nation is owned by the government, and much of it is not lived on by anyone. Meanwhile, the American Southwest has an average unemployment rate of over 4%, with Nevada specifically having over 5% unemployment rate. That is just over 160,000 people unemployed in just Nevada. More than that, the American Southwest is one of the least utilized places in America, with a low population density in Nevada alone of only around 29 people per square mile. You don't need to take our word for this, just go check it out on Google if you gotta. Things aren't exactly right over here, but we're still in the general ballpark, and that's all that matters for the sake of this policy. Everything else that we aren't including here can be hammered out in the more final process once the party becomes relevant enough for it to matter. Next, trees produce fruits and nuts. That's good eats for all parties involved. Some trees are bigger, some smaller. Some produce more, some produce less. Some produce every year, some every other year. Some twice a year, and depending on where you are and what sort of tree you're dealing with, some produce all year round. Hard-hitting facts here at the New Bull Moose only. We know you have to steel yourself for these extremely big revelations in agricultural science. Overall, we can probably average out a good tree to make something along the lines of 75 pounds of produce every year, be that nuts or fruit, acorns, or whatever else you might have in mind. This is, of course, after reaching about 10 years old. Wildly, trees also produce water vapor. We won't bore you with the scientific details, but long story short, leaves are covered in little pores. These pores are how trees breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. We all know this. It's also how trees release excess water. They can't urinate like animals, so they have to exhale water vapor through these pores called stomata. Because these trees have so many leaves, the amount of surface area, and thus the amount of water vapor production of a tree, is more than a body of water of the same size. And so, through this, a forest produces more water vapor than a lake or ocean portion of the same size. Trees, therefore, create more evaporation in that area and cause higher precipitation in heavily forested regions. That's right. Trees make clouds. Trees even hold water in the ground, their root systems spreading deep and holding moisture while stabilizing the soil where it would otherwise evaporate and erode away without their shade. Water pipelines are cheaper than oil pipelines, both to build and to run. Desalination, meanwhile, is a fairly perfected science. Malta and the Maldives get 100% of their water from desal, while Saudi Arabia gets up to 70% of its water from desal, and Kuwait gets 90%. Meanwhile, salt is a global industry, valued at perhaps as much as $42 billion annually. California has access to the sea, abundant geothermal power potential, and a large industrial base to build the infrastructure required to pipe water on a large scale from the sea to Nevada and anywhere in between. And just under half of California land is also federally owned, just saying. Finally, the average person can, in fact, plant 20 trees a day. That is all. Again, all of this is entirely uncontroversial. Go Google it if you gotta. You don't have to take our word for it. It's a few seconds away, in the very palm of your hand. We promise. These are the facts we will face to enact this policy. So now that we got the facts out of the way, just getting everyone on the same page and encouraging them to check our claims if they feel they need to, let's do some simple math. Everyone, feel free to get your calculators out and follow along. Let's start with Nevada, since it has the highest unemployment rate in the American Southwest and the most federally owned land to use. There are over 160,000 unemployed in Nevada. If each and every one of those unemployed people planted 20 trees a day, not a big ask, we think everybody here can agree, they would plant 3.2 million trees every day. Assuming a 5-day work week and removing the typical public holidays, those good tree planters will work for 250 days a year, planting 800 million trees in that single year. These trees, probably being around 4 years old during planting, will take around 6 years to reach full production, even if they are the slower growers like chestnuts and the like. So assuming we start this out on the first year of our presidency, which is our intention, the first billion trees will start bearing fruit at full production before we finish our second term and retire in glory. And how much will those trees provide, you ask? Let's keep our calculators going. 800 million trees, each making 75 pounds of produce every year, amounts to a total result of 60 billion pounds of food. Assuming a fairly conservative estimate of roughly 600 calories per pound of tree produce, this amounts to 36 trillion calories. Let's assume that a human consumes 1 million calories a year to be hyper-conservative. That's over 2,700 calories a day. If we divide that 36 trillion calories a year by a million, we find that these 800 million trees can provide for a minimum of 36 million people. Over 41 million people are on food stamps across our nation, and 1 year of planting 20 trees a day per person by just Nevada's confirmed unemployed population alone would produce the calories necessary to feed nearly all of them, functionally indefinitely, in one presidential administration. At that rate, it would take just 10 years to produce enough agroforestry to completely feed our nation within a decade. And all of it that wasn't eaten can go straight into the cheese caves, which will be expanded to store food for the nation in order to destroy the age-old danger of food insecurity for the rest of time. Let's just stop and take a moment here to really think about this, about what your taxpayer dollars could really be going to. The Democrats and the Republicans are so busy invading other countries, sealing private deals together, getting us to fight each other in the streets while paying attention to their personal wallets, so busy ignoring the everyday American people, that they are and always will neglect the needs of the common folk. Your needs! America's needs! They say they are protecting American interests by invading foreign countries, by getting oil money. But what about the grocery prices? Here, in our nation, in America first! An influx of government-funded agroforestry like this would drive the price of your produce into the pits and force the corporations to be honest by presenting an affordable, sustainable alternative to constantly soaring corporate profits at the expense of Jim, his wife, and their 2.5 kids. Something planted, grown, and harvested with your taxpayer dollars to guarantee it goes to your mouth and the mouths of your children. With this policy, you can see that we will be greening the land, producing cheap food for the masses, employing the unemployed, and bringing our country to the forefront and the upfront of the global stage when it comes to food production and security for our lowest classes. All on the shoulders of our glorious, world-renowned farming class. The hardest workers you will ever know, and the very lifeblood of our society. But it does not stop there, folks. Our policy involves 20 trees an acre. This is hardly a dense orchard, we understand, with over 40 feet between every 2 trees in the grid. What will we do with this extra space, you ask? Well, we farm it. With tens of thousands of extra square feet per acre, we will construct a 6-layer food production standard the likes of which our entire nation will eventually follow. One that will create so much extra food that we will be able to give it away for free. One so vastly far-reaching that it will solve world hunger by its very presence. Because you, fellow Americans, are no longer interested in working 40 hours a week just to scrape by, to choose whether or not to eat well or to buy clothes without holes in them. The soil can be used to grow legumes and potatoes, yams and groundnuts. The surface can grow clover, strawberries, melons, and squash. Bushes and stalks can flourish just over this ground cover to make berries and corn, while vining plants can crawl up the stalks of our corn, the trunks of our trees, and basic trellises put up for the sake of support. Cucumbers and small gourds, vining fruits, peas, and beans can hang from the boughs of these orchards, while the canopies themselves produce all of the fruit we've already talked about. Those canopies which provide much-needed shade to more delicate crops below. And the United States has thousands of crops to choose from, to braid together in a total polyculture farming standard that will eliminate the lowest levels of scarcity the world over, on top of actively terraforming the very planet itself. With this system, a single acre can produce orders of magnitude more than they do under monoculture standards, and the land will remain verdant and fertile from the many nitrogen-fixing companion crops we cultivate in the high deserts of the American Southwest. Slowly, as with the Great Green Wall of Africa, we will turn the blasted beige deserts of Nevada, California, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona into food forests that crawl across the countryside to make our nation greater and greener than ever before. But it doesn't stop there. Agricultural waste will pile up from this. Corn stalks and leftover cabbage stems, fallen leaves, and fruit too bruised to be sold. None of this is good for human consumption. But it is good for animal consumption. Rabbits, chickens, pigs, ducks, geese, sheep, goats, turkeys, and cattle can eat all manner of culls and cast-offs. This, too, would lower grocery prices until they nearly bottomed out. And their manure and bedding can be used to rebuild soil horizons and fertilize the gardens that will be growing all over the American Southwest. Instead of barren, rocky badlands, this policy will use animal manure and leftover agricultural scrap to produce a soil-covered wilderness, the likes of which anyone can walk through and be fed by. A modern-day commons that will eventually produce so much food that the entire American populace simply can't keep up. Once upon a time, you were asked what you could do for your nation. With that question, we got to the moon. With that question, we won the Cold War. With that question, we became the greatest power this world has ever known. But now is the time that we turn back around. Our nation has become great. We have the resources and technology to pull other nations entirely out of poverty and debt, or deliver upon them great and furious wrath, the likes of which nobody could have possibly dreamed just 100 years ago. But do we have the capacity to feed our own people? Do we have the capacity to live as the greatest nation in the world here? As we've said in the previous videos, this is not a left versus right issue. This is not a matter of Democrat versus Republican. If we are to call ourselves the greatest nation in the world, then that needs to apply to everything. Our food prices must be the best in the world. Our land management practices must be the best in the world. Our quality of life must be the best in the world. If we want to call ourselves the best, we must put our money where our mouth is. And contrary to what his cronies claim, Trump is not doing that, and neither are the Democrats. They are putting your money where their pockets are. And we will do better. As future President of the United States of America, we, David A. Gray, will not enrich ourselves, but rather we will raise the lowest bar for you, because we're one of you. We're a low-class farmer on the Oregon coast, in Trump country, MAGA flags and hats all over. What helps you helps us. Your grocery prices get cheaper, so do ours. When you prosper, we prosper. And the greatest way of measuring the prosperity of a nation is not to look at how the billionaires are living, but to see how high they raise the bar for all, to see how the average person lives. Unlike our current president, we do not intend to run for a third term. We do not intend to be the dictator-in-chief under some cult of personality which invents entirely new medical conditions whose only diagnostic criteria is disagreement. We have 8 years to set our fair republic on the path of perfection. We have 4 years to prove to our fellow Americans, to you, that we deserve those 8 years in total. And during those 4 years, we intend to tackle the big problems. We intend to make solutions for the big issues. And the biggest issue in all of humanity is food. This is not some pipe dream. It does not involve new experimental technologies or vast developments in pre-existing machinery to facilitate. This is as simple as planting trees and building water pipes into the desert. One state, in 1 year, could plant enough trees to eventually provide for the majority of our nation's most hungry and vulnerable. SNAP currently costs over $100 billion a year. Surely we can do better by enacting a policy that will eventually pay itself off and make our nation the food production capital of the known world. In time, enough water would be held in the soil, enough water vapor coming from the trees and producing clouds, that we could change the environment itself for the better. We could turn deserts into woodlands. Woodlands that provided food for all who walked through them, and stabilize the economy of our nation by lowering food prices, both meat and produce, down to pennies. And this influx of fresh produce and lean meats, fed with organic agricultural cast-offs, would raise the health of our nation by providing a superior nutritional standard. Our opponent, at the head of the Republican Party, claims that his ideological opponents are trying to destroy America. But we at the New Bull Moose are his #1 ideological opponent, and all we care about is building a better America for the people of tomorrow. It is said that a society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they shall never sit. But we are still a young buck. We are not even 40, and our plan is to have the nation plant trees whose fruit their grandchildren shall be able to enjoy for centuries to come. For Donald J. Trump claims to be the master of the art of the deal, but for our nation to truly prosper, we need to master the art of the meal. We need to make sure that every man, woman, child, and dog has a full belly and a bit of hope for the future. And we don't see that in a future with old Orange Julius Caesar. We only see that in a future where all of us, all fellow Americans, band together to raise the lowest bar. We only see that in a future where we all stand strong and stand together. Because the only way for our nation to truly prosper is to vote progressive. So if you want our grocery prices to actually get lower, and if you want somebody to actually have a plan to do that, one you can see and ask about, then you'll vote David A. Gray for president in 2028. You'll vote Bull Moose.